Someone sold a box of old reels for $8. A collector drove 40 minutes to get there specifically for that box. He identified 2 reels inside it before he reached the car, listed them that same evening, and cleared just over $3,000 before the following Tuesday. The reels looked like garage junk, dusty plastic, corroded metal, brand names people associate with cheap starter kits, and forgotten birthday gifts. That is not a coincidence. The Shakespeare and Zebco reels worth real money right now were built to look exactly like the ones people throw away, and the wrong people keep finding that out too late. The question is not whether these reels are worth serious money. The question is why they keep ending up priced at nothing, and who benefits every single time they do. Most people who find an old Shakespeare or Zebco apply the same filters. Is the brand still on store shelves? Does the reel look like it works? Is there anything obviously special about it? Those filters feel completely reasonable. They are also exactly wrong. The reel that looks familiar, the one whose name you recognize from the sporting goods aisle, may be a late production import worth $4 in a junk bin. The one sitting next to it with a slightly different foot stamp and a specific internal configuration may be the version a serious collector has been tracking on completed eBay listings for 14 months. Condition matters, but not the way most people think. Brand recognition matters, but not the way the store shelf suggests. What actually drives value in vintage Shakespeare and Zebco reels is a different question entirely, and it starts with a manufacturing window most casual sellers have never been told to look for. 2 kinds of people walk through estate sales and old sheds. One sees outdated fishing gear, the other sees a checklist. Before you donate, sell, or throw away a single reel, you need to understand which side of that gap you are currently standing on and what it is costing you every time you get it wrong. The manufacturing window. Between roughly the late 1940s and the early 1970s, both Shakespeare and Zebco were producing reels to a standard that the current versions carrying those same names cannot match at any price point. This is not nostalgia. This is manufacturing logic. Shakespeare was founded in 1850 in Kalamazoo, Michigan. At its peak, the company was producing level wind baitcasters, spin cast reels, and spinning reels with all metal construction, tight internal tolerances, and a country of origin accountability that meant something real. When a Shakespeare reel said Made in USA on the foot, that stamp reflected a specific factory, a specific workforce, and a specific standard of component fitting that took time and skill to produce. Zebco came up differently. The Zero Hour Bomb Company started making fishing reels in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1949, after a watchmaker named R.D. A quick word before we go on. There are things people buy month after month that they simply don't need. My community learned how to find hidden treasures for far less a long time ago, and I've put 101 of them into a book called The Vintage Hunter's Bible, 101 Hidden Treasures to Look For at Thrift Stores, Flea Markets. I won't mention it again. If you want to buy the book, the link is in the description. Hull designed a closed-face spin cast reel to solve a problem he had with backlash on a fishing trip. That origin matters. The early Zebco reels were built with watchmaker precision because the man who designed them thought like a watchmaker. The internal gear sets, the drag systems, the cone mechanisms on the earliest models reflect that logic in ways that later production does not. Both companies were producing something genuinely different during that window. Small production runs, American materials, hand-fitted components, and a manufacturing culture that treated the product as a reflection of the company rather than a unit on a cost analysis spreadsheet. Then, that window closed. The acquisition problem. Shakespeare was acquired, Zebco was acquired, the brand names stayed on the packaging. The factories changed, the countries changed, the component specifications changed, and the internal geometry that made the early reels remarkable was quietly replaced with something cheaper and faster to produce. Shakespeare is now part of Pure Fishing, the same holding structure that controls Abu Garcia, Berkeley All-Star Fenwick, and a list of other names that together cover most of the mid-market tackle shelf. The name on the reel box did not change. Almost everything underneath that name did. Zebco followed a similar path. What began in Tulsa as a precision-built American product became a brand name attached to offshore production runs that share almost nothing with the original mechanical philosophy. Collectors know these cutoff dates the way a serious wine buyer knows a bad vintage year. They know which model year dropped from 5 screws to 4. They know which production run switched from brass to aluminum. They know which serial number range reflects the last American components before the specifications changed. Casual sellers have no idea this conversation is even happening. That gap is not an accident. It is structural, and it is exactly what makes this market work so well for the people already inside it. The information gap. The pickers who profit from this gap are not relying on luck. They study catalog archives, production records, and collector forum threads the way a serious investor studies a balance sheet. They show up at estate sales on the first morning. They sort through mixed tackle boxes while the price tags are still being written in marker on masking tape. They are counting on you to see an old Zebco and think starter kit. They are counting on you to see a Shakespeare and think department store clearance rack. The moment you apply those assumptions, the arbitrage works perfectly, and it works entirely in their favor. Here are the 15 reels that keep appearing undervalued and what insiders look for that most sellers miss entirely. The 15 reels, countdown 15. Zebco. 33, brass cone, 1950. Everyone has seen a Zebco 33 at some point. That familiarity is exactly the problem. The 33 is still in production, still on store shelves, still handed to children as a first fishing reel, and that context makes the early versions nearly invisible to anyone who does not know what to look for. The version that matters is the 1950 standard with a brass cone over the face. That is the tell. Plastic face means later production. A metal cone, specifically brass, on a reel with the correct internal gear configuration and a specific drag clicker sound puts you in an entirely different market. Original examples in correct condition have cleared $300 to over $500 with the right buyer. Most sellers price them at $3 because they see the name Zebco 33 and think they already know what it is worth. They do not. 14. Shakespeare Marhoff, number 19, 43. The Marhoff is a level wind baitcaster from Shakespeare's American production peak, and most people who encounter one have no idea what they are holding. The name means nothing to a casual seller. The shape looks like every other old baitcaster in a dusty tackle bag. What collectors look for is the jeweled bearing cap, the correct foot stamp, and the condition of the level wind mechanism itself. A Marhoff with the original jeweled cap, an unpolished finish, and a smooth level wind that still tracks correctly is a reel that serious baitcaster collectors actively seek. Documented sales on correct examples land between $200 and $600 depending on configuration and completeness. Sellers who do not flip the reel over to check the foot stamp are leaving the identification and the money on the table. 13. Zebco. 600. The 600 does not look special. It is larger than the 33, heavier in the hand, and the cosmetics on most examples found at estate sales are somewhere between rough and terrible. That is not a reason to walk away from it. The Zebco 600 was built for serious fishing applications. The internal components on American production examples reflect that purpose. Heavier gear sets, a more substantial drag system, and a construction quality that the price tag at the time did not fully communicate. Early American production 600s with correct internal components and unmodified drag systems have sold between $150 and $400. The rough exterior is not a problem. It is frequently proof of age. 12. Shakespeare President Model 1970. The President is where Shakespeare put its serious engineering during its American manufacturing peak. The Model 1970 spinning reel has a bale design and internal gear set that collectors consider among the best produced at that price point during that era. Condition of the bale wire is the first thing insiders check. A thin or rough bale is a production flag. A clean, heavy bale on a correctly stamped President reel tells you that you are holding the version that matters. Depending on size designation and production detail, a correct President in original condition sells between $150 and $450. Most sellers see a Shakespeare spinning reel and price it at $5. 11. Zebco 202, first generation. The 202 occupies a similar trap to the 33. The name is still in production. The name is still on store shelves. The name still reads as beginner gear to anyone who has not done the research. First generation 202s have a specific foot design and an internal cone configuration that later production dropped entirely. The drag system on the earliest American examples operates differently than anything the current brand produces under the same name. A first generation 202 in original unmodified condition with correct components has sold between $125 and $350. The name being common is not the problem. Not knowing which version you are holding is. 10. Shakespeare Criterion Baitcaster. The Criterion is the real serious baitcaster collectors mean when they say Shakespeare built something worth owning. American production, tight tolerances, a level wind mechanism that still runs smoothly on correctly maintained examples decades later. The side plate configuration is the first thing to check. Screw count and placement vary across production runs in ways that reflect specific manufacturing periods. A Criterion with correct side plate hardware and an original Dragstar in unrestored condition commands real collector attention. Sales on documented correct examples have landed between $250 and $700. A picker who finds one in a mixed tackle box and correctly identifies it does not negotiate. They hand over whatever you ask and say, "Thank you" on the way out. 9. Zebco Cardinal, early OEM production. This one requires context before anything else. Zebco sold a version of the Cardinal spinning reel under its own branding during a specific production window, sourced from Swedish manufacturer before the brand relationships that produced it changed underneath the marketing. The Cardinal is already a collector reel in its Abu Garcia form. The Zebco badged OEM versions from the correct production period carry the same internal DNA and a fraction of the name recognition. That gap is entirely artificial and entirely exploitable by a seller who knows what they have. Correctly identified examples with Swedish manufacturer markings and original spool configuration sell between $300 and over $900 depending on model variant. Most sellers see Zebco and assume they are not holding something Swedish-made. 8. Shakespeare Direct Drive 1944. The 1944 is a fly reel, and most people who find one in a tackle collection assume it belongs to the category of old gear that has no real market. That assumption is wrong in a way that costs real money. Shakespeare fly reels from the American production peak have a click mechanism and a spool construction that collectors who fish dry flies and care about equipment history take seriously. The foot stamp, the click sound on a free spinning spool, and the condition of the inner spool surface are the three things that matter most. Correct examples in original finish sell between $150 and $400. A reel this age that has never been polished and never had its click mechanism adjusted is worth more in that condition than a cosmetically cleaner version that has been touched. 7. Zebco Spinner Model 10. The Model 10 predates the 33 in Zebco's catalog, and most people who encounter one have never heard of it. That obscurity is not a reflection of value. It is a reflection of age. Early Model 10s have a specific body casting and an internal mechanism that reflects the watchmaker logic of Zebco's founding production philosophy. The drag is simple. The construction is not. The tolerances on a correct early example are tighter than anything the brand has produced in the last 30 years under the same name. Collectors who specialize in early American spin cast reels have paid between $200 and $500 for clean original examples. Most sellers have never heard of the Model 10 because most sellers are not looking at the early catalog pages. 6. Shakespeare Wonder Reel number 18. 10. The Wonder Reel is a name that gets passed over constantly because it sounds like a child's toy rather than a precision piece of American tackle manufacturing. That is the trap entirely. The name is doing work on your assumptions that it has no right to do. The 1810 is a level wind baitcaster from Shakespeare's serious production period with a gear set and a click drag system that collectors of American baitcasters actively seek. The engraving on the side plate is one tell. The foot stamp is another. Documented sales on correct wonder reel examples land between $175 and $500. The name registers as nothing to most people. The reel itself is not nothing. 5. Zebco. 76. The 76 is a spin cast reel that Zebco produced during a specific window when the internal quality of the brand's American manufacturing was at its most consistent. It is not the 33. It is not the 202. That obscurity keeps it underpriced in almost every venue where it appears. What insiders look for is the specific thumb button configuration and the internal gear material. American production 76s use a metal gear set that later offshore production replaced with a composite. That one detail changes the durability, the feel, and the collector ceiling entirely. Clean American production examples have sold between $100 and $275. The reel appears in almost every mixed tackle lot from the right era. It is almost never correctly identified. 4. Shakespeare Standard, number 1958. The Standard is a fly reel from Shakespeare's American production catalog that gets passed over at estate sales because the name reads as generic. Standard, it sounds like the opposite of valuable. That is the entire reason it keeps getting mispriced. The 1958 in correct configuration has a hand-finished click mechanism and a spool construction that working fly fishermen and tackle collectors both recognize once they know what to look for. The spool release, the foot finish, and the click sound on a free-spinning spool are the three identification points that matter most. Collectors have paid between $125 and $350 for correct original examples. A reel with a generic-sounding name sitting in a fly fishing kit nobody has opened since 1981 is exactly where this reel keeps appearing. 3. Zebco Omega. First generation. The Omega was Zebco's attempt to produce a premium spin cast reel for serious anglers rather than beginners. The first generation achieved that goal clearly. Later production under the same name did not maintain the same standard. Most sellers cannot tell the difference, and that gap is where the money lives. First generation Omega reels have a specific casting quality on the body, a heavier internal frame, and a drag system calibration that collectors and serious fishermen both recognize immediately on first handle. The foot stamp and the body seam quality are the fastest tells. Documented first generation Omega sales have landed between $150 and $450. Sellers who know the name only from later production are consistently leaving real money with people who know which generation they are actually holding. 2. Shakespeare Tidewater, Saltwater Series. The Tidewater is a saltwater conventional reel from Shakespeare's American production peak, and saltwater conventionals from that era occupy a specific collector category with a ceiling most sellers have never encountered. Original star drag components and non-replaced side covers are the first things a knowledgeable buyer checks. A Tidewater that has been chrome polished or had its drag star swapped is worth a fraction of an all-original example in worse visual condition. That is counterintuitive. It is also the market. Correct all-original Tidewater examples in documented configuration have sold between $300 and over $800 at specialty tackle auctions. A saltwater reel that has clearly been used is not a problem. A saltwater reel that has been cosmetically restored is. 1. Shakespeare Intrinsic, pre-acquisition fly reel. This is the one. This is the reel sitting in the back of a fly fishing kit in a canvas bag nobody has opened since the mid-1970s, priced at $4 at an estate sale because the company that made it is unrecognizable as anything special to a general audience. Pre-acquisition. Shakespeare fly reels from the correct production window have a click mechanism precision, a spool fit, and a foot finishing quality that reflects the last period when the company was accountable to its own manufacturing standards rather than to a holding company's cost structure. The model stamp is on the foot. The production era is in the click. A tight, clean click on a Shakespeare fly reel from before the acquisitions, in original finish, with no polishing and no replacement components, is what collectors in dedicated vintage American tackle forums have been describing in Want to Buy threads for years. Correct documented examples have cleared $400 to over $1,200. They appear at estate sales priced at nothing because the name Shakespeare now reads as a mid-market brand on a store shelf, and nobody connecting that name to the reel in the canvas bag knows that those are two entirely different products sharing a name. The cleaning mistake. Here is where most sellers lose the most money. It is not in failing to identify the right reel, it is in what they do to it before they sell it. The instinct is completely understandable. You find an old reel, it looks rough, and you want to make it presentable. You hit it with metal polish. You wipe down the side plates until they shine. That instinct destroys premium in ways you cannot undo. Collectors are not buying these reels to fish with. They are buying them as documented objects. The original patina on the side plate is information. The unpolished finish is evidence of authenticity. A reel that has been polished before listing has had its authentication markers wiped off permanently. The same reel in worse visual condition, with original surface finish intact, sells for 2 and sometimes 3 times as much. WD-40 is a documented problem in collector forums. It damages older seals and surface coatings in ways that cannot be reversed. Do not clean it, do not polish it, photograph it exactly as you found it, and ask first. How to identify and sell correctly. Before you price, donate, or sell any old Shakespeare or Zebco reel, flip it over and photograph the foot. Find the model number. Find the country of origin stamp. Check the side plate screw count and configuration. Note the material of the cone or face cover. Note the drag system and whether any components appear replaced. Search the exact model number on eBay filtered by completed sold listings, not active listings. Active listings are what sellers are asking. Sold listings are what buyers actually paid. Those two numbers are often not close to each other, and the gap between them is where every mistake in this market gets made. Post photographs of the foot stamp, the side plate, the face cover, and the full reel profile in a dedicated vintage tackle collector forum before you do anything else. A reel collector identifies it quickly. A picker who wants to buy it cheap will tell you it is probably the common version, hard to say for certain, probably not worth much, and offer to take it off your hands today. Do not sell pre-1970 American Shakespeare or Zebco reels in bulk. Do not let an estate sale company bundle a mixed tackle box as a single lot. Separate them. Photograph everything individually. Ask before you price a single one. The reel in that canvas bag did not lose its value when it stopped being used. It lost its value the moment it left the hands of someone who knew what it was and landed in the hands of someone who did not. That gap is not permanent and it is not complicated. It closes the moment you ask the right question before you hand anything over. The people profiting from it are counting on you not knowing to ask. Now you know to ask.